Hey, how are you doing, girl? Welcome. It's Miguel. So today is the 17th of November? Oh my gosh, the 17th. Oh boy, I tell you, I'm really loving this month. It's been cooler in the evenings, and I'm just now getting used to darkness at the end of the day after work, and I'm I'm really getting a sense that it's wintertime now, and it's still rather warm, and I am quite pleased by that. And the reason is because, well, I've grown up in places that were very cold. I don't know what the temperature in Taos. Hey Google, what's the temperature in Taos, New Mexico right now?
In Taos, it's currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, it's 47 degrees Fahrenheit in Taos, which is where I grew up. Hey Google, what is the low temperature tonight in Taos, New Mexico?
The temperature tonight in Taos is predicted to be 29 degrees Fahrenheit.
So 29 degrees Fahrenheit in Taos tonight. Wow. Hey Google, what is the predicted nighttime temperature tonight in Lompoc, California?
Okay, you might like talking to simple weather. Does that sound good?
No.
Okay,
Hey Google, what is the temperature going to be tonight in Lompoc, California?
tonight in Lompoc, expect a temperature of 51.
51. Okay, so that is a reasonable nighttime temperature. 51 degrees in Lompoc, California, compared to 29 degrees in Taos, New Mexico, right? So I know wherefore I talk, and that is, see, I grew up with Novembers that were chilly, 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, 29 is below freezing, which is what, 31 degrees? And 51 degrees is much more reasonable. It's what's the difference? The difference is, I guess it's only 20 degrees, from 30, 40 to 50 degrees. It's only 20 degrees warmer here in California. That makes a big difference. I would rather it be, above freezing than below freezing. That's for sure. Anyway, yeah, in fact, what's great about November here in California is that we have not yet had to scrape off crystals, right? The ice off our windshields in the morning. And I'm glad for that. I don't think we will be experiencing that until maybe January or February this winter. So, looking forward to putting that off as long as possible and loving the lows of 51 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, it is occurring to me that, I don't necessarily prefer the colder weather, but if I'm prepared for the colder weather, it's not a problem. So I want to convey that too, and I think, part of my apprehension about colder weather, probably has to do with that, just being cold all the time. And what that means, of course, a deeper meaning is that I just need to do a better job wearing sweaters and hats and coats. Yeah. So, as an older person, I think I'm willing to take the plunge and purchase some clothing that is more appropriate for the weather. I might as well do that. So, today is the 17th of November. And let me tell you how I've been feeling today. I've just been feeling this sort of sentimental vibe where I'm just sort of getting into the holiday season and just sort of enjoying the weather. And I have this hankering to go to the mountains. I think I want to go to the forest and stroll around amongst the pine trees and Maybe see if there are any streams that are flowing. I think I'd like to just experience the big sky above me with the mountains and trees beside me. Maybe look at some of the birds as they fly across the sky. And maybe read a book. I've been looking for books that I might be able to read while hiking and spending time out in the forest. And well, I'm becoming more aware of a kind of book that I like to read a lot, and that is what I call plotless books. Okay. So I've read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books. Mostly my books are nonfiction in style, the nonfiction genre. And part of the reason I don't care for fiction is because of the plot lines, which I often find quite arbitrary, right? What I notice when I read a fiction book are these constructions about conflict that arise. And then there's this tension that arises in fiction books. Not necessarily true in fiction. I mean, in nonfiction. In nonfiction, it's essentially an elaboration, a description of the facts in nonfiction books. This happened, this happened, this happened. Or maybe this is an aspect of this, which is an aspect of that, and people have imagined this. And there's just no plot in a nonfiction book necessarily, unless it's sort of like a historiography or some kind of biography or autobiography. The kind of books that I read, like philosophy, psychology, science, there's no plot. No one's gonna die. No one's double crossing anybody else or stabbing someone else in the back. You know, it's not a murder mystery, right? Nonfiction is just sort of an elaboration. It's a description. And what I appreciate are things like how an author uses words, how they string words together, whether there's sufficient detail, and whether the words are illuminating, the concepts and ideas behind the word make sense, right, and fit together, and are supported by evidence. You know, that's nonfiction book writing in a nutshell. Fiction, on the other hand, is like conversation, right? She said, he said, she said, he said, she said, he said. Okay, I'm just not into that. And this whole creation of conflict, it's just arbitrary. Somebody doesn't like someone else because they're imagining that. And then they're less like, oh, I don't want to talk to her, or I'm embarrassed. And look, this kind of plot does nothing for me. Now, what I do like in my fiction is this sense of, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but it's a sense of atmosphere, right? It's about emotions that are elicited, emotions that are developed and described. And quite often, these are pleasant thoughts. These are like what I find in nature writing or nature poetry, right? It's a description, and there's something atmospheric about it. There's something sentimental and emotional, and it's there's something refined and defined and beautiful about it. Quite often there's something beautiful. It's when I read fiction, I think I read it with an eye toward a love of beauty, right? It's something that's beautiful or captivating or magical. That's part of the reason I like the Harry Potter series. Not because of the story, not because I cared in the least about Harry Potter or even Voldemort. What I liked is this sense of, in the Harry Potter novels, I like this sense of wonder, fascination, possibility, mystery. That's what I liked. I liked the ephemeral, the environmental, the atmospheric aspects of the story, right? The magical aspect of the story. That's what brought me back. It wasn't the plot. And so I'm thinking to myself, boy, I would sure love to read a book in the forest. And the kind of books I'm looking for are plotless books. And now there's a lot of nonfiction books out there relating to the wilderness and nature, and I could choose any one of those. But I'm hoping to sort of magnify this idea of the love of the beauty of nature, and I'm looking for books that I can relate to on that level. Fiction books that don't have a plot, right? Don't have this whole idea of plot is essentially a big tradition about how novelists and writers write a story. It's also about essays. There are these rules that were created during, I don't know, Greek dominant culture thousands of years ago, when people talked about how essays ought to be convincing, right? And or plots have to be character driven. And there's got to be this conflict between man and nature, or man versus nature, or man versus man, or man versus woman, or and I can appreciate how these plotful devices are necessary, right? And important for a lot of stories. I would guess 80% of stories. But I think there's a place for books that have no plot, right? Books that are just pure exploration of ideas and maybe the beauty that surrounds us, or the mystery that surrounds us. And to me, this is something that I am seeking to find. And quite often I find it in poetry. And though I'll tell you what, there are poems that I like more or less, and poets who I like more or less, and so I'm continually looking out for writers and poets who I'm able to relate to through their work. Now, I also struggle to find poets and writers that I enjoy reading for fun. I tend to do a lot of sifting, right? I'm sifting through recommendations from this corner and that corner, and I'm doing a lot of setting aside and rejecting these writing styles, and it makes me wonder whether maybe I should just write my own books, write my own poetry. And that's kind of where I am right now. I'm thinking, wow, I just want what I want, and maybe the only way I can get it is if I write it myself. What's also interesting is that when I write something, I really like what I write. It's something that's compelling. The languaging, the word usage, the topics. These are things I'm interested in, that there's some energy behind, right? That's the reason I was motivated to put time into developing and generating the work. And, maybe I'm pretty much getting to a point where that's where I am, where if I'm going to, enjoy a piece of poetry or a piece of fiction writing, it might be, if I'm going to truly enjoy it, I might just have to write it myself for my own good. And you know what? I'm probably right. Yeah. I might be my own favorite author. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So anyway, I have an interest in going to the forest today, and I'm going to try to make that happen. Well, I can hear those dogs barking in the background. I've got some neighbors, and they've got dogs, and sometimes they get riled up, particularly if there's any stranger who happens to walk by the fence line. Yeah, the dogs just start barking. I have the window open. In fact, let me take care of it right now. All right, well, I took care of it. So I went to go close the window. That's all I did. So we'll see how that works. So I was telling you about how I was interested in plotless writing and how I really enjoy the what I'd call a sort of a narrative, atmospheric style, an atmospheric narrative. For me, it's about the exploration, it's about the emotions that are elicited through reading the novel. And so anyway, on that note, I guess we'll go to the next segment, and that is reading from Mary Mackenzie's book Peaceful Living. So here's Mary Mackenzie's book Peaceful Living. Today is the 17th, right? Yep. So we'll begin with today's quotation from Joseph Sugarman. Joseph Sugarman writes, "Each time you're honest and conduct yourself with honesty, a success force will drive you toward greater success. Each time you lie, even with a little white lie, there are strong forces pushing you toward failure." Wow. Joseph Sugarman said that. That's a rather profound quotation. I'm going to say it again. Each time you are honest and conduct yourself with honesty, a success force will drive you toward greater success. Each time you lie, even with a little white lie, there are strong forces pushing you toward failure. By Joseph Sugarman. You know what? I think that is true. Partly because the information you convey about others, if it's inaccurate for any reason, you'll get feedback that's not what you want. Naturally that must be the case. And so the more honest you are, the more vulnerable you are about when expressing yourself, the more true the responses will be addressing your needs and desires. Yeah. This is, I think, really true in relationship, certainly with others. It's about authenticity, right? And Emily, I've got this sense that you really value authenticity. And I have a sense that you're really good at communicating your own desires and wishes. And, that itself is something I admire. I wish to develop in my own self an ability to express accurately what is true for me in the moment. This is a serious, real goal that I have. I want to be authentic in the moment, and I must admit that sometimes I struggle to do this. I think that I'm better than I was 5 years ago, and certainly better than I was 10 years ago. So that's encouraging, right? I'm making progress. I'm on a path that makes sense for me. And but I'm thinking that there are methods that I can use to be more authentic in my communications with others. And right now I've come across 4 main ideas about how I can come across as being more authentic. And number 1, it would be just describing what I'm experiencing, what I'm observing in the world, whether it's what I'm hearing or whether it's what I'm seeing or tasting or smelling or feeling or touching. I'm thinking that this conveying or expressing my observations about the world in a neutral way would go a long way towards sort of expressing my truth. Also, my feelings. I think that if I can do a good job of just stating the feelings that I feel in the moment, I think that that would help me convey who I am more authentically to another person. Now, here's the thing when it comes to feelings, though. I also think that human beings are like parallel processors, and so we're able to feel a lot of different things at the same time. And we may have those feelings. Some of them may be subtle, others may be bold, and I think that there are different levels, right? And as we shift perspective, right, as we view the situation from different perspectives, which human beings are always shifting from perspective to perspective in our mind's eye, we're sort of acknowledging different sets of values that are important to us, and and those perspectives are eliciting emotions. And so we can feel angry and sad at the same time. And we can feel those with great intensity. We can feel happy and grateful and angry at the same time. And, I think this might be a weakness of our culture and of our language. How it's just assumed that people feel one feeling at a time, right? I'm angry, happy, sad, disappointed, whatever the feeling is, that's the primary emotion, and that's the emotion I want to focus on. I think that need not be the case. I have a feeling that emotions are a lot more subtle. They're a lot more nuanced. I have a sense that at least my emotions are quite nuanced. And although I might be feeling disappointment or jealousy or anger in the moment, there are always, close at hand, related emotions and even contradictory emotions. And this takes skill to communicate. It's like, how, if I'm going to convey or talk about the emotions I'm feeling in the moment, I want to be complete, right? There's this sense of completeness. And I can't necessarily talk about my sadness without talking about my joy in the same sentence. So this takes skill, right? Skillful communication to convey the true reality of what's going on in my mind, right? The sadness mixed with joy. In fact, you know what? That's an interesting idea. Maybe what I can do is I can begin to pair emotions that I express. I'll say, I'm sad and joyful because da 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 da. That sounds like a pretty good idea. Always pair emotions together. I'm angry, sad, and happy. I'm upset, joyful, and glad. I'm regretful. You get the point. I think that might be good because it might take some of the sting away from some of the negative emotions I feel. That is, emotions I feel when my needs aren't met. And that might be really helpful. It would, because I think we're all looking for context, right? I might feel joy and sadness at the same time. Joy is happening in the context of sadness, sadness in the context of joy. And there's probably 5 or 6 other emotions in the offing that are just needing to be expressed too. So I guess what I'm saying is that human beings are complex. And in order to get across who I am authentically, I have to address that complexity. So feelings and then needs, right? I've got to describe what I want. And also my wants can be contradictory too. I want freedom and responsibility. Wanting values. Values are often at loggerheads, right? There's values conflict that are just logically inherent when one discusses values and wishes. I wish to be rich and I'm glad I'm poor at the same time. At the very same time. I have a wish to be social and solitary. It's funny. Human beings are such wonderful parallel processors and it's really a gift that we have these contradictory needs. We have contradictory needs, contradictory emotions. And yeah. And I think that just talking about one's wishes, one's desires, sort of is good enough. You don't necessarily have to receive what you want. I think it just needs to be appreciated. For those around you, I think that they even give you the consideration of hearing what it is you want is a loving act. Yeah. Yeah. So requests are not necessary. I think that if someone were to be vulnerable in expressing something that's deeply authentic, and if as a listener I had an interest in satisfying any of the needs that were just expressed, a request from the speaker would not be necessary. I might just invite another person. I might just provide an offer. Well, would you like me to do this? Would this satisfy your need in the moment? And yeah, I like that idea. What that means is that there's no need for requests. Now, of course, making a request is helpful, but the problem with making a request is that sometimes it depends on the request, but there can be like this power over dynamic that exists that might be created. Like, I don't have something, you've got it, you've got power over me. And that can be an uncomfortable dynamic to create in any relationship. So, and what's also quite, not every request is fulfilled, and so for the listener who denies the request, there might be a heavy sense of obligation on the part of the other to satisfy the needs of the other, and that can create a dynamic that is unhealthy. So I'm recognizing that too. It's like, oh, okay, all right, this is working out for me. Maybe in order to communicate myself, all I need to do is ensure accurate observations, accurate feelings, accurate needs are expressed. And that may be all. That may be all. And, all that really is the umbrella. What the umbrella is that it's conveying meaning, right? Conveying the meaning of your observations and feelings and needs. And all that is understood as sort of expressing one's meaning about, what is one experiencing in the moment, experiencing the meaning of one's world, sort of letting another person know about what your world is like. Yeah. In a way, it's an art form. I'm recognizing it as an art form that another person can observe, right? Without the request. That's what I'm thinking. Without the request. Really, the request is actually more of a negotiation, right? A fuller understanding of what a request is that it's a negotiation. You want this, I want that, I'm willing to do this, I'm not willing to do that. Are you willing to do that? Yes, I am. It's part of a negotiation process. And you know what? Making a request it does initiate the negotiation. But you know what? Unless, I'm not sure I want to initiate a negotiation if the other person is not a solid yes to make their contribution. Yeah. Anyway, here I am, psychologizing and philosophizing about authentic relationships. And, well, let's hear what Mary McKenzie has to say about this whole topic. We will begin. with the passage from her book, and it looks like the subtitle is Making Specific Requests. All right, so Mary Mackenzie's subtitle is Making Specific Requests. You've been in a relationship with your boyfriend for a year, and you're incredibly frustrated with your sex life. What is this about? You've tried the usual vague requests such as, honey, can we try expanding our lovemaking to a longer period of time? Okay. He says, sure, the next time you make love, the entire encounter lasts 10 minutes instead of 5. Do you lose hope? There is a solution, although it's not for the faint-hearted. The solution is to be specific. What do you want? How long do you want it? And in what order? Okay. Make your request because you want to enjoy your life with him without judging him in the process. These moments can be embarrassing at first, but when handled with compassion, they can enrich and strengthen your relationship. And so the thought for the day is make at least one specific request of someone today, even if you feel embarrassed. So I'll go over that thought of the day. The thought of the day is to make at least one specific request of someone today, even if you feel embarrassed. All right. Okay. Now, I don't much like Mary Mackenzie's example, but I can see how it makes sense. I think it is important to make specific requests, but here's the thing about a request. Sometimes when people make requests, they are describing a strategy to meet a need. They are describing their strategy to meet a need. For example, if someone wants something sweet, maybe they want dessert, what they'll request from another person is, may I have your bag of M&Ms? May I have an M&M from your bag? And so what that is getting an M&M from the other person's bag. That is a strategy. Yeah. And so here's your partner who has the bag of M&Ms may not want to share their bag of M&Ms. They may have a payday candy bar in their back pocket that they're more than willing to give up to the other person because maybe they don't like peanuts, right? So making the request for the M&M, one partner's request for the M&M, and the receipt of the answer, no, basically stops the negotiation. May I have an M&M? No. Now it's great that a strategy was selected and specific and voiced, but it also meant for a really halting negotiation. Yeah, the specific request created the halting situation. There is another way, and here's the other way, and that is to express the desire for something sweet. The desire for some dessert, right? And if you request an interest in having some dessert, the other person might think for a moment about how they can satisfy their partner's need and basically recognize or remember that they've got a payday candy bar in their back pocket that they're willing to give up. Notice how the unspecific or the generic description of a person's need was more effective in the negotiation. Now you got it. Now I'm getting it. See, I'm learning too, just as you're learning. I'm understanding how to initiate negotiations, and specificity is important sometimes. And let me suggest that non-specific descriptions of needs and desires and wishes and goals is also powerful. Yeah. In fact, even the generic descriptions may be more beneficial to the relationship than the specific ones. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that now. Okay. So this, I don't know about you, Emily, but what's just happened is a learning for me. This is how I've just spoken my way through a realization, right? This is what you're noticing is personal transformation happening before your eyes, right? It's this is human growth, human potential becoming real. Yeah. So I'm happy. Thank you very much, Emily, for being there, witnessing this personal transformation that's going on in my own mind as I'm understanding how to learn to be more authentic and effective in relationships. And so, thank you. I'm really happy. I'm really feeling satisfied about this. So, getting on to the next idea. Christmas time is coming, and I've been reading some excerpts from this book, Hark, a Christmas Sampler, where we've been going over Christmas traditions, Christmas folklores from all over the world. And I've selected a story today, a fictional story. Now, in the past, I've mentioned it before. This is a Russian tale. It's a Russian folkloric tale called Babushka. I mentioned it in the past because a part of the folklore is this idea that the three wise men were going to go out and visit the baby Jesus, but the babushka, who was, I guess, in the home, was going to go, but decided not to go because she had too much housework to do. And I think of this as kind of a charming tale. And the story is here in the book, and I wanted to read it. And I'm kind of interested in what your reaction might be to it, and I'm also interested in what my reaction might be to it. So let's read about the babushka and see how she handles the situation with how her housework is a high priority for her. So the story begins. Once long ago, in old Russia, in the coldest corner of that cold land, there lived an old woman known as Babushka. Hey Google, what does the word babushka mean?
Here's the definition of babushka. In Poland and Russia, an old woman or grandmother.
Okay, babushka means an old woman or grandmother. She lived all alone, and if she was lonely, she never complained of it, but kept herself busy all day cleaning her house and sleeping the sleep of the just all night. One morn, in the deepest part of the cold winter, just after the longest night, Babushka was sweeping her steps of great fall snow when she saw a strange group of folk riding toward her. The animals they rode on were completely unknown to her. Each was larger than a horse, with an odd hump in the middle of its back. But if she did not know what they rode, she knew the riders. They had to be kings, for they wore crowns of gold and silver. The oldest one wore a crown with a ruby, in it the size of a hen's egg. The youngest wore a crown with a sapphire in it, the size of a goose egg. And the blackest wore a crown with a diamond in it, the size of a fist. Babushka made her deepest reverence to them, thinking they would ride on by, for she was but a poor woman, and her cottage, though clean, was very small. But they stopped by her door, and the beasts they rode made strange huffing noises through their noses, and one spit at her between its teeth. May we stop and sleep the day at your house, Babushka? They asked. She was so awed at the request, she did not wonder they knew her name. But after she had settled them in, all three, in her one poor bed, she did begin to wonder, for surely honest men worked a day and slept by night. Or she did begin to wonder, for surely honest men worked by day and slept by night, not the other way around. Still, when they awoke, she did not have the heart to ask them. It was while she was cooking them dinner that one, the blackest of the three, told her that what she had dared not ask. We sleep by day and travel at night, he said, because our way is drawn in the map of the night sky. When she looked puzzled, he explained that they followed a great star. Where do you follow it to? Babushka asked. To the king of all kings, said the oldest. It was but a newborn babe, said the youngest. Come with us this night, Babushka, they all three said together. But there was so much to do, cleaning up after the three kings, that Babushka shook her head. Let me first sweep up, she said. I cannot leave my house in such a state. The kings stood up from the table and looked sadly at her. We cannot wait, Babushka. The only road we follow is that outlined by the star. We know not how long the star will shine. I will follow as soon as I can, Babushka said, and she shooed them out of the door as if they were chicks, and she the mother hen. The last she saw of them, they were traveling down the road, the great star shining ahead of them, and their beasts hawking and spitting as they went. Babushka turned back to her little house and began to clean. She swept and she polished, and she took the covers. She shook the covers till the down feathers blew about the floor. She swept again. By that time it was nearly dawn, and she fell onto her bed and slept. When she woke and peered outside, the snowfall had covered any tracks, and Babushka thought it had all been a strange dream. But by day she cleaned her little house, and by night she remembered the kings. She wondered about the little baby who would be king over them all, and the more she wondered, the more she wanted to find him. So, one day, she cleaned her house for the final time, locked her front door, and started out down the road. Everyone she met, she asked about the baby king, and every baby she saw, she peered into the cradle, saying, Are you the one? In every cradle and in every child's bed, she dropped a little gift, just in case it was the very child she sought. She is still looking. Adapted from a folk tale from Russia. Well, that is a charming story. The Babushka. There's some interesting aspects of the story I guess I'll go into. First of all, it's interesting how they characterize the camel spitting between the teeth and breathing loudly after walking long distances. I'm glad that the Babushka finished her housework and went to go search for the child king. I'm glad they added that last paragraph into the story. What a tragedy it would be if the old lady continued to stay in her home. And I really like the part where the Babushka stops by every child's cradle and leaves a present, where just in case that the child in the cradle is the baby king. So I think that's a pleasant and enjoyable kind of part of the story. And in fact, this is a very useful tale. It sort of provides a description of any presents that a child receives. It describes where the present came from. And it sounds like a funny sort of like a funny and quaint little explanation that maybe a child would would appreciate. That the babushka, this delightful grandmother, virtuous to the core, who did work by day and slept by night, left them a present. So I like that. And what's funny, real funny, is I've never heard of this babushka story. I'm learning so much from this book. You know, I've mentioned this in the past, and that is how books are really a window into the world. I have learned so much from this book, Hark, a Christmas Sampler. It's really astounding. Now, I'm going to have to bring that book back to the library this week. I think it's this week is the last week. Oh, yeah, and now that I think about it, it's due on the 19th, and today is the 17th, which is Saturday, so it's due on Monday. Thankfully, I will be at the library on Monday. In fact, I got to go take that book back to the library it goes, so I don't have an overdue book. So anyway, we really did read a lot of the content in that book. There are other parts of that book that we didn't get to. We didn't get to all the poems. We didn't get to all the songs, the carols. We didn't get to a play that is in there. But we did talk about a lot of the content in that book. So very pleased, very happy with that book. Thank you very much, whoever the author was. Jane Yolen Tommy Del Pola. Paola. I need to do a better job of reading people's names. So anyway, in the last few moments, I figured what we could do is go through some questions. So Emily, here's the part of my program where I'm answering questions. Now, these are questions to help you get more familiar with who I am. You know, you may not have asked these questions in the past, or maybe you thought of the questions but never did ask them. This is an opportunity for us to, or at least for me, to sort of tell you about some of the experiences I've had and what's important to me, and maybe give you some insight into who I am. And so here we are at question number 323. Nope. Here we go. Question number 328. What situations make you nervous? All right. So, well, first off, not too many situations make me nervous, but there are a few things that make me a little nervous. And it involves mainly unsafe behavior. For example, like if I'm going to go for a long walk outside and I don't have sunscreen on, I can already anticipate the sunburn that's going to happen. And so if I'm at the beginning of a hike and I haven't put my sunscreen on, well, then I become nervous. And I just want to go back to my car or get my bag and get some sunscreen on my skin so I don't feel the discomfort of having sunburned skin. So another example of a time when I'm nervous is, say, if I'm hiking in the mountains and I don't have enough water. All right, I don't feel like I brought enough water. I don't feel like I'm able to hydrate like I want to when I'm on the trail. And that gets me a little concerned. I become preoccupied with it and want to go back to my car and grab some water. I have a waist pack that's got a water bladder in it. Very convenient. I also have a Camelback backpack, and those are good sources of water when I'm hiking around. I'm also quite willing to just take a bottle of water in my fingers and hold one while I'm hiking. So that's another example of a situation that makes me nervous. Another situation that makes me a little nervous, I don't know, maybe when I'm driving down the road and I don't have enough gas in my car to make it to the next gas station. That makes me a little nervous. I have run out of gas before and been stranded on the side of the road without sufficient fuel, and it's kind of a drag. Yeah. Now, thankfully, all of those times in my life that I become nervous, they're pretty trivial. Anything else? Sometimes when I'm speaking in front of a group, I am rehearsing internally what to say and about to raise my hand. I might get a little nervous when I first start speaking, but after the first 5 or 10 seconds passes, I get a lot more relaxed. Why that happens, I'm not sure. I think it's about when you're in large groups, public speaking. It's just that public speaking thing. Thankfully, it's never really stopped me from doing public speaking. It's just a little bit of butterflies sometimes. And thankfully, I know that as soon as I get 10 seconds into whatever I'm talking about, all those butterflies go away. And so, given that fact, it's easy for me to push on through. So, what other those are like the main. I know it doesn't sound like a very big deal, but that's about it. It's like sunscreen, water on hiking trails, gasoline on roads, and speaking in front of groups. Otherwise, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a trooper nowadays. Okay, next question. Question number 329. Do you wish to have a different eye color? Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have blue eyes and blonde hair. But it hasn't been a compelling enough desire for me to do anything about those. It's just a curiosity. And the reason is, I think it has to do with, and why it even exists in my mind, I'm not sure. But I think it might have to do with the Western standards of beauty, which I've been indoctrinated in. I fully recognize how indoctrinated I am in Western standards of beauty. And so why that's the case, I'm not sure. In a way, it's sad because I recognize that there are other standards of beauty out there that can be just or even more compelling, and that I haven't been exposed to that kind of cultural tradition is a little sad. I recognize it as being sad. Now, I have used an app, and what the app does is it sort of it allows you to you put your photograph in it, and it uses artificial intelligence to map different colors onto your hair, right? And I've had a lot of colors mapped onto my hair. Like I've had gray mapped, and I've had red mapped, and black mapped to my hair. And honestly, I haven't cared for the results. I mean, can you imagine my hair just being black? Or being gray, being fully gray? That might be something interesting, huh? Or being red. I have looked at myself with gray color mapped to my hair. I mean, red hair, the color red mapped to my hair. That's not interesting. But blonde, for some reason, was rather shocking. I looked at it and I said, I might look just a little more handsome as a blonde. And there is this idea that blondes have more fun as it relates to women. Will I ever make the move and change my hair color drastically like that? I think the chances are very slim to none. Oh, I know. So I may not ever experiment with that small interest. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know, maybe I will. Now, will I ever change my eye color? I think the chances of that happening, like for me getting blue colored eye contacts or something, is really a long shot. I really don't ever see that happening. I really do like the color of my eyes. It's just they are brown, and it's fine. The eye color goes with my eyebrows and goes with my hair color, and that's fine. Now, I also happen to know that when my beard comes in, it comes in slightly reddish. There are some red accents to my hair, and I think that's kind of interesting and unique. And I would certainly grow a beard just to see that happen. And I wonder too if any gray might arise in my beard as well. I'm getting into my 50s soon, and my dad tells me that for him, his black hair, he's got raven black hair, started turning gray when he turned 55. So the way I see it is, I've got another 8 years to go before I totally gray out. I'm so glad that it took him that long. There are people who have gray hair at a very young age. What's that comedian? When it comes to Steve Martin, he had gray hair at like age 26, and he's still going strong. And yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of other people like that who get gray hair really fast as a young person. So thankfully, I get to keep these brown locks for at least another 8 years before they start turning gray on me. All right, next question. Question number 330. Do you like to shout instructions while watching a game show? No, I don't do that. Sometimes if the show is Jeopardy, with Alex Trebek, I will speak out the answers because it's Trivial Pursuit. Part of the fun is trying to come up with the answer first before the contestants. And the way you communicate that is by speaking it out loud, right? Speaking your answers out loud. That's how you know you've got the right answer. And so I will do it for shows like that. Maybe like Wheel of Fortune, right? Where you're able to guess the phrase before the contestants do. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. But I never shout instructions while watching a game show. Nor do I do shouting of instructions when I watch sports. I don't watch sports. I don't even have a television set. Question number 331. Have you ever won a trophy? And the answer is, yeah, I have. And I pretty much won all of them during grade school, right? I think I got a few basketball trophies, and I think I got a trophy for academic decathlon when I was part of that trivia group. And so that's pretty neat. So I don't have that many trophies. I never really participated in sports when I was in high school. And so I don't have as many trophies as others might have. Well, anyway, I just want to say thank you for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate the time that we're spending together. It's important to me. For me, it's really valuable for me to sort of let you know who I am so that you get to know me a little bit better. I want you to know me. I want you to sort of understand where I'm coming from, and I'd like you to know a little bit about my personality, right? And so that, maybe sometime in the future you'll appreciate it and appreciate where you've come from and who your family is and who your dad is. I think it's the least I can do, to offer a little bit of myself up to you so that you know who I am, right? I think it's important. Anyway, I've known you all your life and have a pretty good sense of who you are. It's weakening a little bit, but, as time goes on, I think we'll become more and more familiar with one another and more understanding toward one another, and therefore more compassionate and empathic, as our relationship develops. So I want to say I love you. I love you just the way you are, and I wish you peace.